Hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, who is our lead solutions engineer. Today, Dion will be going over more on the ViewBox Control, and he will also be here to answer your questions. So if you do have questions, go ahead and type them into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. So let's get started. Dion, I see that you're on mute. Oh, you're off mute. Are you there?
Yes, sir. I aggressively mute. I think that's a good practice. It's not just a rule, it's a good way to live your life.
It's a very
Keeping yourself on mute.
Let me go ahead and make you the presenter, and I will let you know when I can see your screen. There it is.
Don't scare. I don't mean to scare people. It's like Good. Well, hey, thank you. Thank you very much, Dave. Appreciate everybody. We apologize. There's been some confusion on the links for the webinar. And obviously all of you found out, but we've been getting some emails through and we're trying to reply and get everybody the latest webinar links and things like that. We always appreciate your attendance.
So the link that you have should be good through 2020. So you guys will be in good shape at this point.
Unless we decide to change it just for the fun.
Unless we decide to just change it, exactly, just to exclude.
It's like, you do that really fast. We reserve the right to be able to change this at any point.
Certain shoes required.
Please see website for all terms and conditions. Thank you. Yeah, so hey, thank you, everybody. As Dave mentioned, we missed him last week. He had the plague. I don't know. I hope everybody out there doesn't have the plague. It's pretty nasty. I got it. Everybody's getting it. It's like the hip new thing. It's crazy. So I'm glad you're feeling better, Dave.
Thanks very much, man.
I know.
But I'm not actually it's the polar vortex. It has not made it out here to Boston. It like somehow skipped us. We always have the worst weather. Well, not always, but often have the worst weather. So I don't know if there's anyone out there who thinks that they're in one of the colder places. Just tell us what the temperature is where you are right now. We will read out the coldest temperature later on in the program.
Who's the quote unquote winner of that contest?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a little chilly here down in Austin. It's a little chilly there. And I think I have a theory that I was up in Boston last week and it was a little chilly at the beginning of the week, but then it got really nice. And then but Dave wasn't there, but he said he was sick, but I'm going to take it by his word. So wasn't trying just to avoid me. It's like, I don't want to be around that guy. 1 hour a week is enough for me. Excellent. Well, hey, thank you, everybody. Put your questions in the Q&A section. We are here for you. And in fact, today's session was generated out of questions. And I also have some follow-up on some questions last week. We take them very serious. And so we want to make sure that we try to satisfy our audience here. We're not up to the level of most of the YouTube video guys, but we're working on it. We're getting there. I guess we're kind of specialist in that area there. So today, I want to dive back into the ViewBox Control. Actually going to show you a very interesting example, plus then show you a little bit of how you can start playing with it. Then going to answer those questions, and then we're going to throw it open for Q&A, and Dave will be monitoring that very closely. Remember, Transform Tuesdays. Dave handles that. We had a great one yesterday. And what was the subject matter yesterday? I apologize. I was getting ready for this.
Yesterday we were diving more into the management console and pointing out some of the features that are overlooked because they are not yet well documented. So basically what I've been doing over the last other sessions as I've been putting together the user's guide for Alpha Transform, I've been coming across these great features that I realize that probably not a lot of people know about. So we've just been sort of following that course. So if you guys are interested, though, in joining us for Transform Tuesday, send an email either to guides@alphasoftware.com, or you could send it to the Transform address, which is tfservice@alphasoftware.com. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I saw a preview of the user's guide. That's amazing. It's really wonderful work, and I can't wait for everybody to be able to share it. It's well, long overdue, and well, I think it's going to have a great impact. So appreciate that, and that was really cool there. Okay, so roadmap. Most importantly, as always, making it easier, faster, and make your life easier in terms of creating client side or user experiences. And really, we're playing more and more with the ViewBox Control. The ViewBox Control allows you, and this is showing mobile, but it's not limited to mobile. It's also available in mobile and desktop anywhere to allow you to create very powerful controls, or more importantly, environments and experiences that you may not think of. I mean, we have our traditional UX builder where you have lists and other pieces, and then you can put controls on your user interface and stuff. But if you really want to take it up to the next level and create a completely different, what I call user experience, the ViewBox is going to be your tool. It is extremely powerful. It's data driven. You can load it multiple different ways, uses JSON templating, and I'm actually going to demonstrate that today. And once you kind of see it, you can never unsee it. It's, you go, oh my God, there's all these cool things I can do. And you'll find that it actually will simplify your life a lot in terms of certain scenarios, especially in terms of coding. You get away from coding and you're working more on setting up sort of auto configurable interfaces, and you'll see it there. Obviously, we're going to demonstrate the web API connection, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the JavaScript and launching those pieces here. But before I wanted to show you some work we've been doing recently. And the idea is, if you think about most of your user interfaces that you do, they're kind of lists and grids and control boxes and things like that. Sort of a traditional form-based environment. But as we know, we're living in the mobile world and the mobile age. And the user experience has dramatically changed with the introduction of touch. And now, obviously, voice and everything like that that's coming with it. But if you play with any of your standard applications, there's not a lot of forms in them. It's more like tap, tap, navigate, this, that, everything else. So you want to create especially if you're going mobile, you want to create a user experience where people can interact, enter data, and do other things like that, but with a minimum of actual typing or other work that's associated unless it's needed. So I want to give you a quick example of a user interface was generated using the ViewBox control. So let's go ahead and go over to here, and I'm going to make this full screen here. Cool. Okay. So the idea behind this is a field application. So the background is a training company that goes out in the field. So they have a back-end system they built with Alpha. This is all built on Alpha that allows you to put in like students and then what they're going to be training on and their current status and other things like that. Then you'll have the people in the field, and the field people are going to have tablets, and they're going to be sitting there with the individuals gauging their performance. So think of just teaching 101. And as these people do their tasks and their assigned things, you want to record quickly what that is. Now, traditionally, they had paper forms. Then they went to an Excel spreadsheet, and they'd build an Excel spreadsheet each time and send it out. And then the person would have to go out and fill out that Excel spreadsheet. But they said, let's recreate it and make it so that and this is the critical element of it, instead of the teacher or really the evaluator sitting there being a technician, filling out forms and filling out spreadsheets and doing stuff, they want the person who's doing the evaluation to be focusing on the student and to have, instead of being in the way of recording information, is to have the user experience where it facilitates that experience so they can quickly gather the data they need, but they can maintain their focus on the student. And I think we've created something that's very, very interesting. And again, think going from like a spreadsheet with a list of names and skills and then having to find the cell and pick it out. This is where we're going from there. So what this says is rethink your user experience. You can bring incredible user experiences to your people. So this is actually a tablet, and you'll see it's going to get nicer in a moment here. But the idea is you have a set of skills and then you have students here. And the matrix is the idea of what they need to be done in terms of this student with this skill. And what's interesting is this is all dynamic. Depending on the class, you could have different people and you could have different skills. So this is on the fly generated and sent down to the tablet. Now this is what they're seeing. So you'll see that for this individual student, they have a yellow area they need to be analyzed on. Black means ignore, green means they're already good to go. And you can see different students have different things they need to do. And these colors are color coded based on a known structure that they already have. So when they walk into the classes, they pull up, they see the students up top, they see the skills, and then they go to Charlie and they go, okay, Charlie, you need to show me your equipment use and inspection process. Go. Tick, tick, tick. So they're sitting there watching it. And then in order to gauge and to record what's happening, they're looking at it. So immediately they know what they need to do with Charlie. It took them like no time to figure out what was the thing. They didn't have to search for, through sheets or do anything else like that. Now, when they tap on this yellow part right here, a panel slides out. And here is your ranking, FDP. And those are related to the colors that are associated. And so they can basically sit there and notice that there is no typing here, meaning they just tap the one they want, click submit, and then the color would change in the user interface here. But if you do want a situation where you want to record more information, and they have a very structured way of recording the evaluation, they can tap on the menu note, and then a new thing slides out where there's a set of codes which they use to evaluate that person. And then they can do a quick search, or they can just scroll up with their fingers, select the item that they want, and then boom, you'll notice that this is now updated with that information there. And as you can see, they're going through and going tap, assess, maybe pick something, close, tap, assess there. So immediately you can see they can spend most of their time focusing on the student and not on this. And this is all a ViewBox. This is a pure ViewBox right here, driven off of JSON data. So there's a hidden list behind this that has this information. And basically when they update this, so if I go back up, what happens is when they update this, it basically writes it into the list, and then the list updates this ViewBox. And now that list has that information. This is all offline. They can then sync, and then boom, the data goes back up, and then it goes back into the database in a normalized mode to then track who those people are and what they do. And then obviously at the end, they can look down at the bottom, and it's tracking on all their things. Have they passed or failed? And this person failed just because they haven't completed all the tasks, and the other things that are associated with other people have passed, etc. So the important thing is that they now have a visual way to interact with information. So therefore their brain immediately can look at this and assess what they need to do in seconds, if not less. And when they're talking to the student and evaluating, they're not sitting there searching through their Excel spreadsheet. They're tapping on this. They're sitting there and watching the person do the thing, and they go, okay. They tap a rating. They then tap a code. Done. Next person. And they know behind the scenes that this is being saved. It's fully offline. It's going to get synced back up. They could be in the middle of nowhere, and all this will work fine. And there's other layers where they can have multiple of these classes put together, etc. So this is an idea of rethinking your user experience, of having the sort of interface between the data and the person become a natural, easy to flow situation versus a struggle. And it was completely unlocked by using the ViewBox. And basically this is just an HTML grid that kind of gets updated on the fly with a associated, if I go back here, this is just a simple UX component that's built into there with a setting there. Same thing here. This is another list that allows you to select it. And again, the last thing it does is after you do that, it writes it back to the list, and then the list can sync back up to the server, and everything's good to go. So I wanted to share that as an experience. What you'll find out is that if you use the ViewBox Control, you'll be able to do some really creative stuff. Your individuals will love doing what, working with your technology or tool. It's not limited to a tablet or a phone. You could actually have the same kind of experience on the desktop web. So I don't want to limit it to a mobile, but I think the tablet is where it really shines, because then you can present a whole bunch of really cool data and be able to evaluate it from there. So what I want to do is kind of show you real quick how you would go about starting to implement something along these lines. And while doing so, obviously, please put your questions in the GoToWebinar questions. So remember, the list control, or the ViewBox control, is all built in the list. So I'm going to go up here, and I am going to go and open up a UX or create a new UX component. And I'm going to start with a blank one because I want to start from scratch. So I'm going to start with a blank UX control, or list control, excuse me. UX with a list control. So the first thing I need is my data source for my ViewBox. Now, the principle I like is using the list control. And the reason why is that Alpha does all the plumbing in terms of connecting things up for you. So I'm going to put a list on here, and I'll go list customers. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and put that list on my item here. Now, I could go ahead and connect this to the database, but I'm just going to grab some static data just to make this fast. By the way, there's a real cool feature. I don't know if you've experimented with this, is that if I do connect to a SQL database to pull this data down, there is a cool little feature where you can convert that data that came from the database into static data. There are some different use cases, mainly during testing and validation. So you don't have to worry about the database being available. You can just make it static and then use it from there. But I'm going to go ahead static. So I'm going to select some static data, and I'm going to go ahead and insert some sample data, which is just names and addresses. And I'm going to click OK. So now my list has these fields. I'm going to go to the list layout. And I'm going pretty quick through this, but it's all built-in capability here. Now, to make this thing interesting, I'm going to go ahead and put in a panel layout, insert around. I'm going to put in a panel card, insert around, and I'm going to create a nano panel card right here. Okay. And let's go ahead and save this, say, list VB fun _ UX. Okay, so I just have basically a simple list, and I'm going to go ahead and make this list. Let's go ahead and let it do its rendering, and then I'm going to go ahead and make it select the customer. I'm going to fill it, and let's do a working preview, and you'll see nothing super exciting yet, but you have these lists of customers here. Okay, now this is a standard list. You can use it. You can do all those kind of things from here. Now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create a view box. So I'm going to go into here and I'm going to create a view box. And I'll go ahead and do that. Okay. And I'm just going to attach this view box to that list. So I'm going to go into my ViewBox Control. I'm going to go to the data source and I want to make it what's data. You can create static HTML view boxes. That's kind of a fun thing you can do. If you want to put in some fancy HTML and it's not really going to be driven by data, you can still use this to do so. But I'm going to say data because I want this to be driven from my data. And then the data source type, as we've talked about before, is I could use static JSON, I could use database, JavaScript function, but also most importantly, I can use a list here. And the list I'm going to grab is list of customers. Okay. Now, if we do it, notice what happens. We get to see our fields because what it's done is that it's looked at the list of the customers and said, hey, here are my fields. So now I can go into my ViewBox layout and I'm just going to add my controls right here. So I'm actually not want to go too fast, but I'm on the layout. So I'm going to put the layout here. I'm going to go ahead and add an item here. Here's my label or my data controls, and I'm going to go OK. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Save this, and you'll see, and this is not where I want it yet, but let's go ahead and experiment with it. So we can see right here that it's basically just spitting out first name, last name, and it's just kind of all munged together. So we want to make some formatting to clean that up. But then we're going to take it to the next level and make it much more interesting. So the first thing I'm going to do is go in here to my ViewBox layout, and there are, by the way, containers. So you can set like data groups, data group footers, headers. You can actually, as we've demonstrated, do what's called list control. You could actually put a layout container, which is kind of cool in there. And then some really fun stuff, even tab controls. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to just go into freeform. So this turns it into freeform, and I'm just going to put in BR. And the reason I do this, and that's a break symbol for HTML, the reason I'm going to do this is that, as I've talked about before, you can separate the design of this view box from the plumbing, meaning that you can tell someone, hey, I need a view box that's going to show 4 fields. First one's first name, last name, and do it really cool. They could go create the HTML and CSS, give it to you, you paste it in here, and you're done. And that's, in fact, what we've been doing on a couple of our recent projects, because we have some very talented designers who know how to make nice looking stuff. So now you'll see, basically it's spitting out first name, last name, and then that little break, it's putting it on the next level. But again, this is just text. So let's go ahead and go back and make it more interesting. And we're getting there, so bear with me here. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to click fill container, because I want this to fill that container. Now what I'm going to go in here, and in here I can just put any HTML I want. So I can go like, for instance, bold. I want the first name to be bold, and I can go ahead and put a /B. And as you notice, it's got autocomplete. So I can actually autocomplete, and it's got all of the different stuff, which I use the HTML here. So let's go ahead and we'll actually put in both of them there. So now when I do my preview, all it does is take the data out of the list, run it through that processor and format it for each row the way I want it. So each one of these formats these. Now you'll notice that right now my view box is just showing all the rows, which is what I want because I could hide this list and they wouldn't even see it and it would still work. As we demonstrated last week, you can actually connect this so when you select one, it just loads that one item into this view box. So depending on your use case, it could be one of those or the other ones from there. So now I'm going to go back in here and let's take it up notch. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to make this a little more interesting. So let's go here. Sorry, it's a little kludgy here. Okay. So I'm going to put in a table. Okay. Then I'm going to put in a TR, which is a row. And then I'm going to put in, it's a TR. Okay, so we go first name. Oops. Oh man, sorry. You know what? I'm going to cheat. I did this yesterday. I'm getting smart about this stuff. I'm just going to go steal my view box I did yesterday. Let me see if I think it's delete me. There we go. I think I did it in this one here. Okay. Haha. Good way to cheat. Just save ourselves some time. Notice I'm just pasting that stuff in. And okay. I'll come back to that in a moment. So you can see I basically put in a table. The first row of that table just has first name, last name, city. And then I have these fields in there. And basically I've just put in the fields. And the way you can insert those is either copy paste them or just go down here and say insert field. So now I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click save. And I'm going to go to working preview. Okay. So you now notice this is in a grid format. It's hard to see. So let me go back into the design of it real quick. And let me go into the view box and let me go here. And I'm going to put in a border 1. That way we put a border around it. It's not what we want to see. By the way, I'm using a table, but you could use CSS grids and all the more modern technologies to do that. So you can see it's kind of showing you each one. So it's spitting out each table from there. And there's different ways you can adjust that from that standpoint there. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So what I want to do next, though, is the following. This is really why I want to show you where the power comes in. As you can see, it's just going to render this out here. And so it's basically taking all of this, doing a merge and spitting it out. But let's say I want rows where the state is Massachusetts to be red or green. Let's make them green. So I'm going to say here, I'm going to say background color is equal to green. Okay, so I'm just hard coding that for right now. So let's go ahead and do a working preview and see what it looks like. You should see the background color of each row be green now. Okay, but let's say I only want to show it green for states that have MA. This is where the huge power comes in, which is super powerful. So you'll notice I have a command here that says start a row and make that row background color of green. Now what I can do is I can go in here and I can put what are called commands. So I'm going to go ahead and insert one of my commands. And so I'm going down here, I'm putting it right here. I'm putting in here to insert command. And you'll see I have a whole bunch of different types of commands. This is called JSON templating. And I'll point you to some resources in a minute. But I'm going to pick this one, if logical expression. Then what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put insert my command. And I'm going to put else. And I'm going to put a final thing in here, which is another command, which is endif. So it's classic if, else, endif. And it has a very specific way it's done because this is being processed by there. So you can see if logical expression. So I'm going to say if state is equal to, and it's 2 equals because this is all Java, MA, then I want it to spit out this. If not, I'm going to go ahead down here and I'm going to say, just spit out a regular row. So now what happens is when alpha for each row goes through the analyze this, it starts putting it together and it gets to here and it says, oh, okay, I'm going to look at the data for this row. And if it does match this, I'm going to spit out this. If not, I'm going to spit out this. Then I'm just going to do the rest of the merge. So I'm going to click OK. So now I'm going to go into my working preview. And if I did it correctly, you'll see that only the rows with Massachusetts are highlighted in green and the rest is there. And you'll notice that's all I have to do is put that little directive in there. I didn't have to write an if loop. I didn't have to check each row's data. It does it automatically. And that's one of the most powerful aspects about this is the fact that you declare what you want it to be, and alpha will take care of running all this logic and spitting out and taking care of that for you. So what's great is you can create very complex interactions. So for instance, as you noticed in that other example, I've got a full grid. Each of those grid elements has data in it. I can look at that data, and based on that data, I can highlight the color and different things. And all I'm doing is putting these little if-thens around that information and then alpha. Now, a couple other things here. You'll notice, and I didn't do this yesterday, so if I screwed up, bear with me. This is where I go off track. There's a problem here. It's spitting out first name, last name over and over again. I really don't want that to happen. So what you can do is you can go in here, and I can go up here and say, this is all I want this to do is one time. So I can go down here to the command and I can say header, and then I can say insert command end of header. And I think this will work. Basically, this says, okay, what is between this tag and this tag only spit out once. So it's smart enough that the first time it comes out, it says, oh, we haven't done that. Let's just spit that out. Then every time after it, it ignores it. Let's see if that works. I think I might have to
make sure you close your table tag though in the footer. Good.
Thank you. Oh, yes. Thank you, Dave. And so I go insert command. And this is where, a little bit of studying, playing around, you'll be able to do it. So footer and footer. And, I didn't have to click this. I could just write it in there, but I like to do that because then I make sure the name is correct. So again, same thing. This will only spit this out once at the end of there. And this should hopefully, unless we need to put the root. That's the only thing. I don't know if we have to do there. No, I missed something up. It missed the tag. I think what you have to do, and I think I worked this out, is, and this is where I apologize. Well, let me go ahead. Root. I think I have to surround this whole thing with a root. And you'll get experience with it. Root. Okay. I think that's what it is now. Root is a special command that says, oh, I'm going to be iterating over a couple things. Da-da-da-da. Dun-dun-dun. By the way, a little note. What root says is I'm going to have more than one item. And so you have to have it in there so it understands it's going to be iterating over multiple times. This is all borrowed from JSON templating. So as you can see now, I can go in and I can say, I can make this much more complex. I could make this a if then else. I could do all other stuff. And the moment I change it, let's say I want to make this to be, what's some good data in here? Let's see. I think New York was one, I think. Of course. Northeast. Polar vortex people. Boom. Check that out. And there are ways to make that dynamic. Right now, I'm looking at the data that's in this list, but that data could come from other places. The sky's the limit. It's just fun and amazing once you get the nomenclature. But it allows you to build these things very quickly. You can use standard off-the-shelf HTML, and then you come in and add sort of the wiring to it from that standpoint. There are other type of commands in here. For instance, you can do counts. This is where you get into, you can almost do reporting in this. You can do a lot of other fun, you put in values and other stuff there. Now, and then I could save this template and restore it later on if I kind of tend to want to use this over and over again, which is cool in your project. You could have like a standard way you present data, like a card-based metaphor for some data. And again, since I'm using standard CSS and HTML, I used a BJ color, or like a background color here, but I probably would use a class. And I would put in my system classes, so I'd just be swapping classes on things. And that's a much more effective way to, because then you can put all the complexity in the class of the layout and the structure and things like that. By the way, you can also include SVG icons and stuff from there. Now, how do I learn more about this? Well, I'm glad you asked. First, if Sarah's with us, she can put some links there. But more importantly, I'm going to go to the Web Projects Control panel. I'm going to go to Tools, and I'm going to go to the Open Template Tester window. Okay, so this is fun. Built into Alpha is what's called a tester there. So you put your JSON in here, you put your template in here, and then any CSS, and notice over here you get your preview. So I can go in here and watch. I'll make this first name John, and notice how it instantly updates it. The other thing that's cool about JSON templating is you can make it like instantaneous in terms of data changing. It's pretty cool. Now you'll notice here that in my template I have if type is equal to customer, then put it out in with customer in there. So I can go into this data right here and watch over here. I'll say customer, and you'll see this instantaneously change. But I can go in here and make the modifications to my template here and then have it spit out here. So that's called the built-in template tester. And what it allows you to do is instead of having to go through what my did, which was modify the view box, then show it, you can play with it here and kind of work it out. You can actually click menu, and here are your template commands. Like if I want to insert a template command, it's here. So this is sort of your playground to kind of experiment and play with it and get stuff going. And you can use different types of JSON, different templates. You can actually add JavaScript to it, which is pretty cool because you can use JavaScript to do some funny stuff in here. In fact, instead of, I think you can actually have JavaScript scripts do the evaluation of this stuff. Plus you can add your CS in here. So this is really fun to kind of play with. And again, it's at the Web Projects Control panel. And again, you put your JSON in here, your template here, and you'll immediately see. And so if you break something, like let's go ahead and go in here, and I'm going to break this and see if that breaks it. No, maybe, oh, I think it accepts double quotes, but let's try this. Let's just see if I can break it. It basically allows you to play with it and kind of get it going from there. I guess I can't break it. It's better than me. It's smarter than me. By the way, there's also this cool comment function, like in your back here. This can get pretty complicated pretty quickly. So let me go ahead and open this. So for instance, right here, you can see I've got that. I can put in a space in here. HTML will ignore this, but I can insert a command, which is a comment. And in here, I can say evaluate the state and color code as necessary. And what will happen is when it renders this, it'll just ignore this. But it allows you to kind of like, oh, what did I do here? What was I doing? Because, these can get fairly complicated. This is a simple table, but you could have something more structured. And again, I highly recommend look at using CSS classes because you can embed a lot of cool stuff in the class so that it keeps this simple. And you'll play with it and you learn how to do that from that standpoint here. So that, if you look at this, that's how we got to here, is that basically this is a table structure. It puts in and inserts the information in here. It color codes these things from here. And then the other thing we did is, remember when I said you would click here? Like when I clicked here, it popped this open here. Well, how we did that was that we created, and I'll go ahead and I'll show you how this works. This is so cool. I'm going to create it. So I'm at my UX level here. I'm going to create a JavaScript action. And I'm going to open a UX. And I'm going to add a new action, which is open a UX. And I'm going to add that action as, let's go ahead and, let's see what, I'm trying to find a good one. And well, let's do that. It'll look redundant, but go there. And I'm just going to pop it up as a window. But if I had a better structure, I would have a panel or something like that would do there. So I'm saving that. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my view box, and this is what unlocks the most amazing power from here. I'm going to add an item here. I'm going to go show editor. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and you'll see that I've got an on-click event. And so I'm going down here to the on-click event, and I'm saying JavaScript insert code. So I'm going to run that UX. So this is just going to run that action I created here. And then what I'm going to do is go to my ViewBox layout. And what I'm going to say is when they tap on the first name, I want to trigger that. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to insert an item, show editor. Now, this is very important. Right now, when I insert this, it's just going to launch, it's going to call that JavaScript. But what I can do is I can insert item arguments where I can say, pass along the state. So when I show this editor, pass along the unique ID or the state or whatever happens to be. And therefore, what it's going to do is it's going to trigger show editor and pass along this information to that JavaScript. So then I can then say, oh, I know which field I'm on. And there's some other tricks you can use to do this pretty simply. So now let's go ahead and give this a try. And I'll go into working preview. Okay, so I'm going to click like here, but watch when I click first name, check it out. I'm going to click first name Amanda. And that could be a tap. If this was bigger, it could be a tap. And so now I can integrate this very visual element with traditional kind of like JavaScripts. And then in here, you notice I've got the same thing running right here. But I could have my editor all touch enabled. When I click close, I would say basically, oh, I have to, yeah, because it's dirty. It's saying it's dirty. View boxes, by the way, are considered input controls, so they make things dirty. So what I could do in here is that when I click submit, I could then update my core list data and then say refresh it. So a good example, and I apologize I didn't, is that when I click on a user, I would change their state. When I closed it, I would change the state here and then just say ViewBox, re-render yourself. It would re-render this and it would reapply into the color coding. So once you kind of get the feel for it, you can really disconnect your app into smaller pieces and create very cool interfaces. And most importantly, this is obviously in a desktop web mode, but you can see on a mobile device where you're touching things like, oh, here are my highlighted items. I'm going to click that and it's going to drill down into the details. Well, the drill down could just be a panel card coming out with the details for that record. And then you get this really cool experience and really fun. And if you go out on Udemy, Upwork, there are so many good CSS, HTML people who can build very, very cool interfaces for you. And again, you don't have to know all that stuff. You just need to know how to take their CSS and HTML, add items, put it into the ViewBox control, and you're golden. So I'm going to go ahead and hold it off there. I've got some answers from last week, but I want any questions before I move on to the answers for last week. So I'll put that back to Dave.
So we don't have any ViewBox questions that I see in here, although I have noticed that Sarah has posted some documentation in the chat window. So there is documentation on using templating, and you'll find that in the chat window. There's documentation on the ViewBox, and there's also a little bit more on, there's another one on client-side templating. So there's a couple of links there to take a look at. So thank you very much, Sarah.
Outstanding. Oh, hey, and how are we doing on our temperature?
Hey, you wanted the temperature. All right. So I would have thought that Canada, our viewer from Canada, would win, but they haven't. And it is cold in Canada. Don't get me wrong, but it's only -2 degrees Fahrenheit. The far and away winner has got to be from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, right now, which is at -16 degrees Fahrenheit, which is -27 degrees Celsius for those of you who are playing in so that is
wow.
Oh, wait a minute. I got a -40. We just have a -40 coming in right now.
No way. Where's that from?
Where is that? Jeremy, where are you located again?
Probably Detroit.
No, it is Canada. He's in Ottawa.
Oh, those Canadians.
All right. Well,
always got to win, don't you?
Oh, boy.
Hey, remember, Canada, America's hat.
-40 degrees where Fahrenheit and Celsius meet. So,
oh, my God. That's insane. Isn't that absolute zero? I think,
it's completely nuts here.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. Be safe. Stay
brutal.
inside. Feel like burning That's when you feel like burning the furniture, you
Oh
know?
my goodness. Yeah. Oh, that's brutal. So you said you had some questions to go
Oh
over. I
yeah,
do have
real
a
quick.
question
Okay.
about
So
ViewBox. So why don't we do the ones that have been asked earlier, and then we'll go to the other
yeah,
questions
real
on the
quick.
list.
Okay, so there were two key questions that came out last week, and I kind of fumbled through it. So the first one, which was just I did not know, is the following: is someone asked in Alpha, we have the ability to create node modules and actually run node programs on the same Alpha server. Alpha server includes a node system, the node.js executable, and so you can create there. The question came in was, well, okay, that's great, but I actually have a node module node program running on what's called an Express.js server, which is it's a specific sort of lightweight framework that runs on Linux boxes, etc. How can I run code there from Alpha? And I went back to the dev team. They said there's no there's no way to call that code directly from Alpha. You can't create like a proxy or something like that, but just publish that code as an API on that server and then use Alpha's API calling to call that node module on that other server, which is kind of a natural thing for node modules. So there's no real way to run the code explicitly saying, okay, run this code on that server. But if you wrap that in an API, you can easily call from Alpha over to that other server through the API and then execute it there. So I hope that gives you kind of a pointer and help out there. We're going to see more and more of that microservices where stuff sits on different places. I've been experimenting that myself. It's really powerful because now your server doesn't have to do everything. It just needs to know how to call other servers to get stuff done and then bring the results back. So the second question was the following, and I got clarity on it. The question was, what's the best way to start exploring responsive design, i.e., when you rotate or when you have an app that's running on a mobile device, how do you determine what it looks like? And the starting point that I like to start with, and I showed it last week, and I want to go back through that real quick, is there's a great example here called let's see, where is it? I think it's two-panel responsive layout. So mobile app framework, two-panel responsive layout. Let me go ahead and just open that up and show you what it looks like. And the core principles are here, and they consist of two things, okay? Principle number one is that you can set what are called minimum sizes on panel cards. And you can create layout sizes specifically, but the important thing is a minimum size. And so you'll notice that I have panel card number one and panel card number two. Panel card number one has a layout size of 300 pixels. So it's going to be 300 pixels wide. Panel card two does not have a layout size. It has a minimum layout size, which means it's going to go ahead and stretch to however much space you have available on your screen. So if you have 1,000 pixel wide screen, this is going to be 300, this will be 700. But by putting in a minimum size, it says, okay, if the total screen width is, if this takes up 300, basically if it goes below 300, dock this panel card, meaning hide it, don't show it. And let me show you what that looks like in the working preview. Okay. So you'll see I'm in horizontal mode. This panel is 300 pixels. This panel is extending to take up as much space that's left, which is about 400 pixels in this case. But watch when I go to vertical. You'll notice something. Two things. One, it disappeared because we don't have enough space to make this 300 and then have this 300. So it says, sorry, I'm just going to hide it. You'll also notice that a button showed up that now allows me to show that panel. And you'll notice there's a button that says back to go back to there. So and notice this is just automatic. If I go back to horizontal or like this, I've got plenty of space. If I go to like vertical here, it goes to this, etc. So if you set just minimum layout sizes, it's going to automatically, if you're on a tablet, it's going to show you more space, and you're not limited to a single panel card. You could have 2 or 3 panel cards on there and it will obey appropriately. Now, here's the tricky part. When that happens, you still need to be able to give the person the ability to navigate. So when we're in horizontal mode, there's no need for navigation, meaning that I can see everything on there. Like if I go back to horizontal here, I can scroll this up and down and I see everything on there. But if I go to vertical, now I don't see this other one. So I have to give them that ability. And so this button appears. So how do we handle that? That's the second part of the recipe. The second part of the recipe is in properties and into responsive layout settings. You can set rules that trigger JavaScript actions, ViewBox updates. Like a good example is ViewBoxes you could have one that's oriented for a vertical or a horizontal, trigger those things. In this case, what's going on is that we've created two rules. And what a rule is basically we have the ability to inspect the system and say, are we on iOS? Are we on Safari? What's the screen width? What's screen height? What am I orientation, landscape, or portrait? And what the UX will do is every time it will run through these rules and it says, oh, like for instance, if I'm greater than 600, so I'm in a horizontal mode, it says, oh, you're greater than 600. I want you to go ahead and run this rule. Well, what this is it runs this JavaScript that in this case, it sets the display of that button to false, meaning it hides that button that allows you to go to the second panel. Now, if it detects the screen is less than 600, then again, it runs another piece of JavaScript that, guess what, shows that button. And this is all automatic. You don't have to worry about it. When something changes, like for instance, when I change orientation, it automatically reruns these rules because it says, hey, wait, my environment has changed. And this happens when it opens up, etc. So the magic here is the panel structure will be the same, will be handled by that minimum size capability. The actual showing and hiding of the navigation buttons. Now, this is very crude. This is basically just showing a button. But guess what? In my panel layout header, I could add a control bar. And in my control bar, I could have multiple control bar layouts. And then I could say, oh, if I only have this screen real estate, show like my minimum control bar layout. And that's just a simple piece of action JavaScript that says set the layout of the control bar to this. If I'm horizontal, it says, oh, you got more space. Do the one where I show all the icons on the control bar. And again, all of that is triggered through this responsive layout is basically I can add on to here saying, okay, modify panel card, set the active layout of control bar, set the values of the control bar. So, or just any random JavaScript you would like. And that opens up anything you want to do on it. So the best starting place here is to use that one template, which is the responsive one. And let me go back to there and show you which one that is. And kind of play with it, play with the sizing, play with the responsive UX component. Okay. And it's called two-panel responsive layout. And then secondly, research that. And there's actually, and Sarah did a great job of documenting how to handle the responsive layout settings. There's actually a really good piece of documentation on that. And it literally walks through step-by-step building something like this. So that's good. So if you don't mind, Sarah, pasting it in there, you'll find that it'll save you a lot of time. You'll enjoy it. And that was kind of a follow-up from last week. I kind of stumbled pretty badly. So I wanted to kind of come back and clarify exactly how you would approach this. This is really the magic is this responsive layout of Genie basically allows you to reconfigure on the fly your whole environment. So let's say you had like a tablet-based interface. Well, you could add a rule that says, for instance, if I'm on a tablet, then trigger all these things to set it up for a tablet. If I'm on a phone, make it a phone interface. And the cool thing is now you have a single UX. You can reuse components, so you don't have to create whole two new layouts. You just basically have sort of within each of the components different layouts. Like for instance, on your list control, you may have like a grid format for horizontal, and maybe you have a phone-based interface for vertical or something like that. And it's really fun from there. So it's pretty good stuff. So that it was a follow-up from last week. So let's open it up to our esteemed colleagues. And I'm sorry this has gone really long, but wanted to get to my people before and also do justice to the ViewBox stuff.
That's how it works. If you ask your questions ahead of time, you get them answered first.
I
But
know.
here's the first question
Quality.
that was asked today live. It has to do with mobile login. And the question is, how do you set up your mobile app login screen so it remembers the username?
Ah, gotcha. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new UX here. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up one of our standard templates here, and the one you should get to know is something called Security Framework Login Component Mobile App Persistent Login. And this goes beyond what the individual asked for, but I'm going to go ahead and use this as the basic because this is the one you really want to focus on. Okay, so the idea behind this is that it has a username and password, a login button, and then you have your application you jump into here with all the rest stuff here. The trick on this is what this will do is when you click login, it actually calls back to the server and creates what's called does the login. And if you log in, it loads what's called a JSON Web Token, JWT. And that's stored with this. And it's all done automatically by this set of code in here. Is when you do this login here, and it will actually try to log you in. If it works successfully, then it creates what's called a JWT, and then it stores that JWT locally on the system. And you'll see that there's some information that's being stored on the local device here. Now you can take advantage of that. When the person clicks login here, if you want to preserve the username, you can actually, and this depends on the environment, but you can actually put it in local storage. And then therefore, when this reopens, you could have it restore from local storage. And if I go to JavaScript and I just do a method, and I think, no, that's just standard. Actually, that's standard JavaScript is local storage. Let me see here. Let me go here. JavaScript. And it's a very simple command. And let me get over here. You just say local storage set item, and then you give it a key and then the value itself. So in that login button, you would say, okay, grab, create a, into my local storage an item. Basically, it's like a little scratch pad of information. Insert that value there. And then what you can do is you can then say local storage get item. You give it that name of that key, i.e. where you saved it as, and then you can just restore it onto that box. And this is all done what's called local storage. So if you're like on a PhoneGap app, when you relaunch the app, that local storage is going to be available. In fact, that's how this works, because what we do is when the person clicks login, it goes back to the server, it generates a JWT, it encrypts that JWT, gives it like a timeout, and then it sends it back and stores it in local storage on the app. Then when the person opens up the app, it looks at that JWT and says, oh, hey, I've got a JWT. Okay, so let's look at that. And they says, oh, okay, it's got their username or it's got their username. It says they're available. So I'm going to go ahead and take that information and skip them right into the app. But then that times out after a while. So we're using that local storage to basically store local credential information, so you don't have to log in. This is important for offline, because let's say I go out in the field and I've logged in, I'm out in the field, and then all of a sudden I have to log in again. Well, I don't want to have to, like, oh, I'm offline, I can't connect to the server, I'm done. Whereas this allows you to close the app and reopen it. But you can use the same methodology using this local storage set item and get item, or to store that into your app. And then therefore, when you reopen this you can then run the little code to say, okay, put username back in there. I probably wouldn't store password. That's not very secure. And then at least they don't have to rename or redo the username. It kind of saves it in there. If you are on a web server, you can use cookies, and Alpha has the ability, but there are certain limitations on cookies. It may not all work. And now you also have to notify the person with GDRP that you're using cookies for a particular reason. But if you're on a website, you would use just a cookie, and it would store that little cookie and read it back out of the cookie. Dave, you were saying?
Oh, I was about to say, yeah. And so this method, though, would work on both web and mobile, because it's...
Oh, it does. Okay, so local storage is available for both. Good.
And the other thing is, I've noticed some of the apps often have a remember me button.
Yes.
Either store or don't store the username. So it looks like, you could add a little bit more. You could add a checkbox or something to that, and then use logic to see whether or not it should be doing that in the first place.
Agreed. And then that way you give them the option of whether, because some people may have security policies that say, no, never even put your username information in there.
So someone pointed out here, having done some work with this before, that yes, you can do it using local storage. However, there is a chance that the device may end up needing it and blowing away your username. So if you want to be
Yes.
rock solid, you could also
Oh,
put it into local storage instead, where it actually not local storage, device storage instead. So which is a little bit more work, but not too much more
yeah.
work.
It
So
basically that writes
actually
it
JavaScript.
to the file system, I believe, and so
Exactly.
it's
That's
actually on the file system.
exactly. So it's there. Yeah. Okay, last question, and I think we have time for this one. Could we go back to the template tester for a moment? We just wanted to have a little bit of clarity on how to use it. There's someone using the template tester, and they had some JSON data that they wanted, and they
Oh,
pasted
okay.
it into the template tester. And they said, what am I supposed to do next? Is there like a refresh button, or nothing came out in the preview? One of my guesses is, well, if you don't have a template and you just have JSON
Yep.
data, in other words, how do you populate those other ones too?
Okay. So right here, you'll notice I got rid of my template. No preview. So I'm
Nothing.
just going to go here. The magic is curly brace it. And
Mm-hmm.
notice it does a close for you. Thank you. And type in the name of the value. Sorry. Okay. And notice,
There it
voila.
is.
And
Right.
then I can go like dash. Now the dash is hard coded. And then I can go last name. And notice it just instantaneously. So, and in fact, you can click menu here and say, oh, it doesn't have actually field here. So it doesn't,
Huh.
yeah, in the view box, it actually has fields. So it'll actually do it, but it's curly braces here. Now, remember, it's very sensitive. So first, you're in the Java world. So if you put these if thens, things like evaluation, is this equal to this, is going to use JavaScript orientation, mean like a double equals and things like that versus XBasic. The other is be careful, because if you like misspell in your logic the field name, it could you'll see like an empty template. So it's a bit sensitive. That's why you want to use your template tester to kind of get things working, and then you can just copy this out and go into your view box or go from there. But what's cool about this is I can paste in my CSS. I can put anything I want in here and just see it instantly happening right here. Pretty handy in terms of how it does. I anticipate there'll probably be another version of this, because it's this somewhat of a limited amount. I'd almost want to say, oh, I don't need to see this stuff. Well, I guess you can close it. Yeah, you can close it if you need more space here. And I think, no, I can't drag that. It just does equal there. But if you need more space, you can close the stuff you're not using and then always load the stuff. Now, you can save this template here and give it a name saying webinar. So next week you go, oh, you know what? I need to work on that again. Reload it. Boom. It comes back in and you can start playing with it. And then manage here. I think that allows you to like go to where it's saved on the file. And this has all the information here. And then you can load examples. This is really fun. So let's go ahead and do something. I'm going to do something killer. Check this out. So notice you have nested, like you have employees, first name, and then skills. Oops, screwed that up. Here's the template. You'll notice you have your header area. We have our footer area. Notice we're using a directive here to say iterate over employees in here. So these examples are great because you can go, oh, I see. This is how I use header. This is how I use footer. Oh, I see. Employees is the top level, but notice I have skills through skills, which is this middle section. And you'll notice it iterates. It does the employee, puts out their skill data, does the second employee, puts out their skills data, then puts the footer, and check this out, actually does an account of employees. So down here, you'll notice that there's a little directive called at count employees, and it's smart enough to know, oh, basically count all the records that are in here. And you can do the same thing with skills. So these examples are really nice because there's a lot of really cool ones that allow you to do. Like for instance, date and, oh, it didn't like that one. Let's try a different one here. Yeah, that was kind of, yeah. So you'll see, for instance, here, product to uppercase. So you can actually do things like make things uppercase. Notice book is here, price, quantity, and check this out. Total, I actually put a calculation in there. Price times quantity formatted as number this. So I didn't even have to write any code, and it just took this and did it. It's incredibly powerful. Behind the scenes, our development team is using this a lot to build new controls and do other cool stuff. But it's something that if you master this, you're going to find really cool and unique ways to use this without having to build reports. Without, you can. It's really fun, and all this is on the fly. So if I go in here and say, you know what, the price is actually going to be $52, notice instantaneously. So the cool thing about this is that this could actually be controls on your mobile device disconnected from the server. This could be a ViewBox, and the moment you change this, you say update the ViewBox, and then your user interface will evaluate. And if you have any if-thens in there, like for instance, let's say the total was greater than 880, make it green if it's low. You could have that in here so that the moment this data changes, the complete formatting of this could change along with the actual numbers in it. Hugely powerful, really fun. And once you get the hang of it, really simple.
That is super cool. Thank you very much, Dion.
Yeah.
And it looks like we have come to the end of the hour. So, Dion,
Dun,
thank you
dun,
very
dun.
much for presenting. I want to thank everyone who attended, especially those who asked questions. And
Yeah.
if you have more questions, go ahead and send them to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com, and we will be sure to get back to you. A copy of this session will be recorded and will show up on our playlist. If you need a link to our Q&A playlist, send an email to guides@alphasoftware.com. Last week's episode is not yet up, but it will be posted by Friday. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit behind on that. Thanks again. Have a great day and stay warm. Take care and goodbye.